Is brought to you by Pfizer.
CBS Health Watch sponsored by Pfizer.
Anderson Cooper 360. Brought to you by Pfizer.
ABC News Nightline. Brought to you by Pfizer. Making a difference. Brought to you by Pfizer.
CNN Tonight. Brought to you by Pfizer. Early Start. Brought to you by Pfizer. Friday night on Aaron Burnett Out Front. Brought to you by Pfizer.
This Week with George Stephanopoulos is brought to you by Pfizer.
This weather report brought to you by Pfizer.
Today's countdown to the royal wedding is brought to you by Pfizer.
And now a CBS Sports Update brought to you by Pfizer.
Meet the Press Data Download. Brought to you by Pfizer.
This portion of CBS This Morning sponsored by Pfizer.
On how to find the hidden sugars in the American family diet. Sponsored by Pfizer.
Good evening and welcome to Tucker Carlson Tonight. How powerful exactly are the big pharmaceutical companies in this country? Consider the news that did not break today. The pro-transparency news organization, Project Veritas, just released an undercover video of a Pfizer executive bragging on camera about how his company conducts a kind of Frankenstein science, manipulating COVID viruses for profit, imperiling potentially the entire world, doing it in secret, possibly in violation of federal law, bragging about this. And you would think every reporter in this country would be itching to follow up on it, calling Pfizer, telling the public about it. But no, that's not happening. In the 24 hours since Project Veritas posted this footage, it has been viewed more than 12 million times on Twitter. No other media outlet has covered the story at all. MSNBC and CNN, which perhaps not coincidentally take huge amounts of advertising dollars from Pfizer, those two channels have devoted a total of 0 seconds to the story. Well, just go online and find out about it. Well, Google, the biggest search engine in the world, which has a monopoly on search in this country, appears to have gone out of its way to make it much more difficult for users to learn anything about the Pfizer executive pictured in the footage. And so there is, in other words, on television and in most places online, a near total media blackout of this story. How powerful is Big Pharma? That powerful. Now, that footage shows a Pfizer executive called Jordan Tristan Walker. He is, according to the documents Project Veritas posted, Pfizer's, quote, Director of Research and Development for Strategic Operations and mRNA Scientific Planning. He's just 2 reports removed from the CEO of Pfizer, Albert Bourla. His name is Jordan Walker once again. Here he is.
You know how the virus keeps mutating?
Yeah.
Well, one of the things we're exploring is, like, why don't we just mutate it ourselves so we could create undoubtedly develop new vaccines, right? So we have to do that. If we're going to do that, though, there's a risk of, like, as you could imagine, no one wants to be having a pharma company mutating viruses.
Pfizer's thinking about mutating COVID? We're not going to say it to the public. We're quoting. One of the things we're exploring is, why don't we just mutate it ourselves so we can preemptively develop new vaccines? Now, what does that sound like? Does that sound familiar? Well, it sounds a lot like the gain of function research you read about, the research that was occurring at the Wuhan lab just before COVID broke out of the lab and overturned the world and wrecked the U.S. economy. That was the research that Tony Fauci lied about under oath. Well, in the clip you just saw, the Pfizer executive is careful to say it's not happening right now, but it is something that Pfizer is secretly considering, without telling the public. But in another undercover video, also shot by Project Veritas, Walker suggests that research to mutate viruses is ongoing.
Sounds like gain of function to me. I don't know, it's a little bit different. I think it's different. It's like it's definitely not gain of function.
Sounds like it is. I mean, it's okay.
No, directed evolution is very different.
Direct evolution?
Directed evolution.
It's not gain of function. Oh, no, it's directed evolution. So if you're wondering how Tony Fauci was allowed to lie under oath and get away with it, the FBI did not raid his house. He was never handcuffed. Maybe it's because he used a different term for the same thing. At Pfizer, apparently, they're just calling it directed evolution.
Well, they're still kind of conducting the experiments on it, but it seems like from what I've heard, they're kind of optimizing it, but they're going slow because everyone's very cautious. Like,
right.
Obviously don't want to kind of accelerate it too much.
Yeah.
But I think they're also just trying to do it as an exploratory thing because you obviously don't want to advertise that you're trying to figure out future mutation.
Yeah, you don't. They're still kind of conducting experiments on it. You just don't want to advertise that you're figuring out future mutations. And by the way, that's why gain of function research was banned until 2017 when Tony Fauci helped restart it. And the result was, of course, COVID. So Walker, in this tape, made it very clear that Pfizer is worried about a repeat of the COVID lab leak.
You have to be very controlled to make sure that this virus that you mutate doesn't create something it goes everywhere.
Something crazy.
I suspect is the way that the virus started in Wuhan. To be honest, it makes no sense that this virus popped out of nowhere.
And of course, the point is to make money.
I mean, either way, it's going to be a cash cow. COVID will probably be a cash cow for us for a while going forward.
Walker's thought this through. This is not just off the top of his head. He's not stupid. And he's clearly thought through the potential consequences of this research. But he also is honest enough to admit that COVID's been a cash cow for us. Why aren't they regulating a company like Pfizer? Could it be that regulatory capture is real? We don't have to guess anymore because Jordan Walker explains it for us.
I have a revolving door for all government officials. Wow. Yeah, for any industry though. So in the pharma industry, all the government officials who review our drugs, they come work for pharma companies.
You work for Pfizer. My question for you is, why does Pfizer want to hide from the public the fact that they're mutating the COVID viruses?
Is this real life? I'm literally a liar. I was trying to impress a person on a date by lying. This is absurd.
Please don't touch me. Well, this is not. By the way, don't tell anybody.
Someone who's just working at a company to literally help the public.
So that was the end of it. James O'Keefe of Project Veritas shows up and informs Walker he's been recorded, and he's clearly upset, and of course you can understand why. He's shocked. He didn't know anyone was filming. Someone was. But what's so interesting is his first excuse is, I was lying. When in fact, he has explained in a very sophisticated and very believable way how Washington works. And no executive at a pharma company has ever been filmed saying that on camera before. And then the situation begins to degrade.
Please unlock the door.
Give me
some stuff. Please unlock the door. Please unlock the door. 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 This is remarkable here. Thank you. We're trying to unlock the door. Unlock the door. Unlock the door. Unlock the door.
What was that? This guy's a pretty high-level Pfizer executive confirming a lot of things you already suspected and telling you things you had no idea were going on. So of course you'd want to know, what? Was that real? And what does Pfizer have to say about it? Well, no one else is calling Pfizer, so we did. We didn't have complex questions, very simple ones. We called and emailed Pfizer all day. But despite their famously well-funded PR department, all the lobbying money they spend, they did not get back to us. They refused to answer. So we contacted instead Dr. Robert Malone. From what you saw in that tape, does it sound like Pfizer is conducting or contemplating conducting research that is effectively like gain of function? Well, how is that allowed?
Precisely. So the biowarfare treaty is like a cheesecloth that's so leaky. And Pfizer is a global company that's quite clear with massive resources, the ability to conduct research in virtually any region. They have the ability with their money and power, as you've seen, to define the rules and construct their own reality. In fact, this is the second time that Veritas has caught somebody saying this. They caught a employee at BARDA basically saying the same thing, as I recall previously.
It's completely corrupt. That is corrupt. Dr. Robert Malone, thank you so much.
The first step to world governance would be something that people would be interested in. But as per usual, the whole thing surrounding this is that this is not a democratic process. This is something that is diametrically opposed to the democratic process, and that's why we're not hearing about it. Because what they're doing now, they're working on a treaty of which we will see the first draft on August 1st of this year, which is called the World Health Organization Pandemic Treaty, which, as you said rightfully, will be a legally binding treaty for practically every single nation on the earth. So once a new pandemic hits, and those are their words, not mine, we will have a united response to how to deal with the pandemic, meaning that there will be this organization that is not democratically elected, that we didn't vote for. We don't even know exactly who is in it or who we can hold accountable for the things that they will impose on us, is going to basically create laws that will decide how our respective nations are going to respond to a new crisis, a new pandemic. So this is huge news, and it's very dangerous, but as just indeed, we're not hearing anything about it.
And believe everything evil that's said about him, and love Ukraine, and there's no in between. And that reminds me a lot of, you're either a white supremacist or you go with the Democrat narrative on everything under the sun.
The most lethal terrorist threat to the homeland today, white supremacy.
And I want to understand white rage, and I'm white.
I mean, there's as much interference here as you could possibly imagine. Before you even get to Hunter Biden, Nancy Pelosi, John Kerry, Mitt Romney, and all of their children who earn millions from Ukrainian gas companies. These days, it's hard to believe anything because they've lied about COVID, they lied about Russia collusion, they lied about the Ukraine impeachment trial, and there's so much more going on in Ukraine that nobody is talking about.
Does Ukraine have chemical or biological weapons?
My job as a journalist is to try to understand what is the truth here. I don't like being lied to, and we're being lied to on an epic scale. When we're told your only choice is you have to be 100% with Zelensky. Slava Ukraina, who's a puppet who you can find on the internet in black stilettos and leather pants. Zelensky was selected, like so many of our leaders. And honestly, with big tech and with election fraud these days, we don't know how many leaders all around the world have been selected for us and weren't actually voted in.
How to build back better.
We have to build back better.
Build back better.
If Donald Trump gets the Republican nomination, there are many of us that will move heaven and earth to ensure he doesn't win.
We are fighting the same battles all over the world. To pretend that this war is about Russia and Ukraine is a barefaced lie. Putin has been warning for 15 years that he is not going to stand by while the globalists take over the world, build bioweapons facilities and whatever else they're doing in Ukraine. Ukraine has been a center of money laundering for many of the leaders in this country. Billions of US dollars have been laundered through Ukraine, and we say nothing about it. Does nobody question these things? We have an idiot like Lieutenant Colonel Vindman.
Mr. Vindman, Lieutenant Colonel Vindman, please.
Do you always insist on civilians calling you by your rank?
And sits there as a lieutenant colonel. He didn't even make colonel, and he's telling the President of the United States what his policy should be. You have a traitor in the form of Maria Yovanovitch, who was Obama's ambassador.
My fellow Americans, you deserve the truth, and I know you can handle it.
My name is Jonna Mendez, and I was Chief of Disguise at the CIA. One of the things that was going on when I was Chief of Disguise was an enormous research program into the new advanced disguise system. It was basically the masks that everybody always wondered if we used masks, and this was the beginning. This is a series of photographs of when I met George H.W. Bush in the Oval Office and revealed to him that I was briefing him wearing a mask.
Now, in particular, and regarding this photograph, it is a Getty image photograph. If you go to the link, you can see the photographer, all those kinds of details, who took it. So what is the anomaly with this particular photograph?
Do you have any people paid by the CIA who are working for television networks? This, I think, gets into the kind of getting into the details, Mr. Chairman, that I'd like to get into in executive session.
It was a big challenge to come up with something that finally actually animated and worked to really fool a person, but we did.
They learned the art.
We actually brought Hollywood back into our labs at one point to look at what we had done, and they were stunned. They're absolutely stunned.
Congratulations.
My husband was Tony Mendez, and he was played by Ben Affleck in the movie called Argo.
Aliens and robots?
Yes, sir.
You're telling me that there is a movie company in Hollywood right now that is funded by the CIA?
Yes, sir.
Are there many actors in Hollywood who also moonlight as agents, do you think?
I think there are probably quite a few, yes. I think probably Hollywood is full of CIA agents, and we just don't know it. And I wouldn't be surprised at all to discover that, this was extremely common.
Tony, they didn't mention it in the movie, but Tony had deep connections to Hollywood, to the tradespeople out in LA that did a lot of things we were interested in doing. Special effects people, makeup people. Tony was chief of disguise 10 years before I was chief of disguise. And so he passed on some of his expertise to me. But he had a particular interest in the magic industry out in LA. Not so much the magicians on the stage, but the people that were working behind the scenes to make that magic happen. So we went to LA and we posed some questions to them. We said, we have a problem. We're looking for novel solutions. Well, LA did have some ideas, of course. That's what they do for a living. They introduced us to a new concept. They said, what you are calling an operation, we call a performance. That's what we do. We put on performances. And before we start working on that performance, we have to define the stage that the performance is going to take place on. Then you have to know who your audience is. Who are you playing to? Who are you trying to fool? Once you assemble those two pieces, you can pretty much choose the time and choose the place and simply overwhelm them with your performance. Then they showed us some tools that they used. The one that really caught our eye is what's called a stunt double mask. You all know how they're used. When the movie star is so famous or so good looking that they can't risk damaging him, we liked the idea of stunt double masks. They're quick on, they're quick off, they dramatically change your appearance, and we started using them and found them to be valuable to our operations. But that audience piece of it did not allow you to get close enough to one of those masks before the illusion fell apart and you saw it was a mask. So we went back to our disguise labs out at Langley and we invented a whole new genre of masks. Masks that are so good, that are so realistic, that you can actually get up close and have a personal contact with someone for an extended period of time. They're good enough that you can brief the President of the United States in the Oval Office wearing a mask. And he isn't sure if it's you or if it's someone else. Those masks were the beginning of a whole new generation of work that we did at the CIA. Once we could make these masks that fit you so well, then we discovered we could make a twin. We could make another you. There could be two of you. We could actually make 5 or 6 of you, but usually one extra was all we needed.
We will respond accordingly. God bless you all, and may God protect our troops.
But that's only the tip of the iceberg. As longtime CIA lawyer John Rizzo tells it, the relationship between the spy agency and La La Land is quite cozy. In his new book, Company Men, Rizzo says that actors, producers, and other movie-making power players were always happy to help out the CIA in any way they could.
You work for the very enemy you thought you were fighting.
It's impossible.
And tell me why you've never been to Langley. You've been lied to. All lower-level agents have been lied to. I am trying to help you here.
So you're saying I'm working for the enemy? And that you are the enemy?
Sydney, this is your last chance. You have to go.
Behind closed doors on this New York campus, a secret gathering of some of the world's most powerful people. Gates, Buffett, Bloomberg, Winfrey. It was like the Super Friends.
In the great hall of the Justice League, there are assembled the world's 4 greatest heroes.
But these cartoon-fueled puff pieces reveal more than they know about Gates and the other mega-rich philanthropists they are attempting to idolize. They reveal that the idea of the selfless billionaire do-gooder is a work of fiction so unbelievable it is only fit for Saturday morning cartoon fare. As we have seen in our first two explorations of Bill Gates' role as global health kingpin, the seemingly selfless generosity of the Gates family through their eponymous foundation has in fact greatly increased their own wealth, with Bill Gates' personal net worth having doubled in the past decade alone. But the takeover of public health that we have documented in How Bill Gates Monopolized Global Health, and the remarkably brazen push to vaccinate everyone on the planet that we have documented in Bill Gates' Plan to Vaccinate the World, was not, at base, about money. The unimaginable wealth that Gates has accrued is now being used to purchase something much more useful: control. Control not just of the global health bodies that can coordinate a worldwide vaccination program, or the governments that will mandate such an unprecedented campaign, but control over the global population itself.
I'm going to talk today about energy and climate. And that might seem a bit surprising because my full-time work at the Foundation is mostly about vaccines and seeds, about the things that we need to invent and deliver to help the poorest 2 billion live better lives. We need to meet a new constraint, and that constraint has to do with CO2. CO2 is warming the planet, and the equation on CO2 is actually a very straightforward one. If you sum up the CO2 that gets emitted, that leads to a temperature increase. And that temperature increase leads to some very negative effects. And so that's a big challenge. It's very different than saying, we're a 12-foot high truck trying to get under a 10-foot bridge and we can just sort of squeeze under. This is something that has to get to zero. Now, we put out a lot of carbon dioxide every year, over 26 billion tons. For each American, it's about 20 tons. For people in poor countries, it's less than 1 ton. It's an average about 5 tons for everyone on the planet. And somehow we have to make changes that will bring that down to zero. This equation has 4 factors, a little bit of multiplication. So you've got a thing on the left, CO2, that you want to get to zero. And that's going to be based on the number of people, the services each person's using on average, the energy on average for each service, and the CO2 being put out per unit of energy. So let's look at each one of these and see how we can get this down to zero. Probably one of these numbers is going to have to get pretty near to zero. That's back from high school algebra, but let's take a look. First, we've got population. The world today has 6.8 billion people. That's headed up to about 9 billion. Now, if we do a really great job on new vaccines, healthcare, reproductive health services, we could lower that by perhaps 10 or 15%. The world today has 6.8 billion people. That's headed up to about 9 billion. Now, if we do a really great job on new vaccines, healthcare, reproductive health services, we could lower that by perhaps 10 or 15%.
These are not typical blood clots that form after a person's death. When a funeral director sent a sample to a lab in Texas, its elemental composition was found to be extremely low in iron, magnesium, potassium, and zinc. This suggests that the clots are forming from something other than blood. And this is not an isolated case. Many embalmers across the country are finding similar clots in the deceased after COVID-19 vaccination began in 2021. Welcome to Frontline Health. I'm Dan Skorback. Embalmers. It's a unique profession that prepares the body of a deceased person for their funeral. Part of this process involves draining the blood from the corpse and replacing it with embalming fluid to preserve the tissues. And sometimes embalmers have to deal with blood clots in the veins and arteries. Richard Hirschman, an embalmer of 20 years from Alabama, told Epoch Times that usually he sees blood clots in the deceased between 5 to 10% of the time. But somewhere around 2021, embalmers across the US have been noticing a change in the blood of the deceased. Richard, for example, says he now sees abnormal clotting 50 to 70% of the time. In 20 years of embalming, I had never seen these white fibrous structures in the blood, nor have others in my field. Out of this concern, Richard sent a few of the clot samples to a lab in Texas. Compared to the blood of an unvaccinated person, the clot samples had very little iron, magnesium, potassium, and zinc. The Epoch Times asked Dr. Wade Hamilton, a cardiologist, to help us make sense of these numbers. He said these did not look like normal after-death clots. The fact that iron, magnesium, and potassium were so low in the samples suggests that there was no blood flow in the vessels, and that the unusual fibers that made up the clots could have very well been the cause of death. But what's the deal with these clots, and why are they forming? Well, some doctors we talk to have a theory, and it has to do with the way certain proteins unravel when something goes wrong in the body. There is this condition that is seen in neurodegenerative diseases, and that's the formation of this abnormal protein called amyloid. In healthy people, plasma cells inside the bone marrow make special light chain proteins to protect the body from infection. When these light chain proteins become defective, whether because the plasma cells become abnormal or for some other reason, these proteins will begin to clump together and form thread-like strings that the body cannot clear away. Dr. James Thorpe believes this misfolding of proteins could be related to the COVID-19 vaccine and the formation of clots. This is how he explains it. The COVID-19 vaccine diverts energy away from physiologic processes in the body towards the production of the toxic spike protein. This directs energy away from the normal process of internal digestion, also known as autophagy. This results in protein misfolding and propagation of large intravascular blood clots, and also a variety of related diseases, including Alzheimer's and others. While it is possible that COVID-19 illness in itself could potentially contribute to these diseases, it is unlikely. And if so, the effect of the vaccine would be 100 to 1,000-fold greater than that of COVID-19 disease. Another expert, Dr. Sherry Tenpenny, has been analyzing vaccine adverse reactions for about 3 decades. She also believes the clots are linked to amyloid proteins. When the spike protein was mixed with other blood proteins, the combined amyloid-like structure was resistant to the enzymes that would normally break down the clot. This leads to the persistence of a voluminous number of microclots in small blood vessels throughout the body called capillaries. Millions of these tiny clots effectively block the passage of red blood cells into tissue, decreasing oxygen exchange and leading to multi-organ.
To really understand what Gates means by population control, we have to look beyond the concept of controlling population size. At its most fundamental level, the population control that Gates speaks of is not birth control, but control of the population itself. In order to understand the broader population control agenda and how it ties into the Gates Foundation's plans, we have to look at a puzzling development that took place in 2017. In that year, Gavi, the Gates-founded and funded alliance that partners the Gates Foundation, the World Health Organization, and the World Bank with vaccine manufacturers to help ensure healthy markets for vaccines, took a strange pivot away from its core mission of vaccinating every child on the planet to providing every child with a digital biometric identity. The idea was first floated by Gavi CEO Seth Berkley in a Nature article that year, Immunization Needs a Technology Boost, where he states that the goal of 100% immunization will not be reached without secure digital identification systems that can store a child's medical history. He then gives a specific example. We are working with a company in India called Kushi Baby, which creates off-grid digital health records. A necklace worn by infants contains a unique identification number on a short-range communication chip. Community health workers can scan the chip using a mobile phone, enabling them to update a child's digital record even in remote areas with little phone coverage. This sudden interest in digital identity was no mere passing fancy for the Vaccine Alliance. Gavi doubled down by becoming a founding member of the ID 2020 Alliance, a public-private partnership dedicated to spearheading a global digital biometric identity standard. Other founding members of the alliance include Gates' first company, Microsoft, and the Rockefeller Foundation. In 2018, Gavi issued a call for innovation in digital technologies for finding, identifying, and registering the most vulnerable children. The call specifically requested technologies for capturing, storing, and enrolling the biometric details of infants on rugged biometric devices. Berkeley continued to follow up on this idea in public engagements as one of the new core missions of Gavi.
What's interesting is that people tend to think of, birth certificates as kind of a major document, but, the most common, as I mentioned before, is not a birth certificate, is not a death certificate, is not a marriage certificate. The most common connection, vital registration for the population is actually a child health card, because we reach more than 90% of children with at least one dose of vaccine as part of routine. So they're in the system. The challenge is that contact is not connected into the system. So if you could connect it, then you have the ability to give them their basic identity papers. You have ability then later on, if they want to own land or they want to have their rights, you're able to help them with that. But we're not currently taking advantage of that, and so the children get seen, they get enrolled in the health centers, but that information is not used for anything else.
First Detroit Auto Show in 3 years.
Yeah.
Is the pandemic over?
The pandemic is over.
Climate deniers, people who believe climate change is not happening in any meaningful way, are sometimes painted in the media as fringe characters, as kooks. So this might shock you. A man who co-founded the Weather Channel thinks climate change is a hoax. His name is John Coleman.
Hello to all your viewers. I resent you calling me a denier. That is a word meant to put me down. I'm a skeptic about climate change, and I want to make it darn clear, Mr. Kenny's not a scientist. I am. He's the CEO of the Weather Channel now. I was the founder of the Weather Channel, not the co-founder.
And I'm glad you did, because I am addicted to the Weather Channel. I watch a lot of cable news.
Now, hold on just a minute. I'm not done. And CNN has taken a very strong position on global warming that it is a consensus. Well, there is no consensus in science. Science isn't a vote. Science is about facts. And if you get down to the hard, cold facts, there's no question about it. Climate change is not happening. There is no significant man-made global warming now. There hasn't been any in the past, and there's no reason to expect any in the future. There's a whole lot of baloney, and I regret it's become political instead of scientific, but the science is on my side.
I don't think we're going to come to a conclusion about the topic right here. What I do wonder,
I know
though, is
we're
when
not,
you
because
see
you wouldn't allow it to happen on CNN. But I'm happy that I got on the
we've
air
been
and got a
talking here for
chance to
several
talk
minutes.
to your viewers. Hello, everybody. There is no global warming.
You've seen them in Star Wars, Battlestar Galactica, and dozens of science fiction and fantasy stories. But laser weapons are just make-believe, right? Well, maybe not. Energy weapons are real, and they're a lot more powerful than the novelty laser pointers that you're probably familiar with. Though they might not look like you imagine them. Take the US Navy's LAWS laser system, for instance. This experimental 30 kilowatt solid-state laser was installed on the USS Ponce in 2014. It's a real, fully operational directed energy weapon. And while it doesn't shoot out brightly colored blasts of energy like you might have seen in movies or TV shows, this invisible laser weapon still packs quite a punch. In tests, the Navy has used it to detonate explosives from a distance, burn out the engines of approaching boats, and have even used it to shoot down small, unmanned aerial aircraft.
The powerful laser weapons developed by the US Navy are just one example of how the world of military knowledge has been increasingly focusing on directed energy weapons as the next great evolution in battlefield technology. Directed energy weapons, including high-powered lasers, represent a cutting-edge weapon system with significant advantages over conventional kinetic solutions. These advantages stem from the unique properties of directed energy, which enable it to deliver precise, rapid, and scalable effects on the battlefield. One of the most remarkable benefits of directed energy weapons is their pinpoint accuracy. These weapons can emit a highly focused beam of energy, accurately aimed and adjusted in real time, allowing for the selective engagement of individual targets. Consequently, threats can be neutralized with minimal collateral damage, reducing the risk of harm to innocent bystanders or non-combatants. Another critical advantage is their lightning-fast speed of engagement. Directed energy travels at the speed of light, enabling almost instantaneous target neutralization with impact.
Called, like Project Bluebeam?
Yeah, good one.
What is that?
That's
lasers, right?
Yeah, I can actually talk about that one, but that is it's really bad. But you know the people that see orbs in the sky, go around that fly faster.
UFOs.
UFOs.
Yeah, there's Navy pilots. There's multiple Navy pilots who talk about they got their they were flying F-18s. These Navy pilots, and one of them's coming in here in 2 weeks. He's Ryan Graves.
Okay.
He's a Navy pilot flying off the coast of North Carolina, and they got their radar upgraded on their F-18s, and all of a sudden they were seeing these things darting around on their radar.
Okay. Don't tell him what I'm about to say and see if he knows about it.
Okay.
So what we do is we play with our own forces to make sure our trickery will work on the enemy. And those are directed energy weapons of where we do intersecting beams or focus beams into the atmosphere. And notice they're always in the atmosphere to excite the electron orbitals of the oxygen and nitrogen in our atmosphere, and it causes a glow and it causes ionization. That ionization shows up on radar, and it's like a cat laser pointer, and we're making planes chase them.
That's exactly how they describe these things moving, like laser pointers.
Yeah, and so we can do it in 3 space. We can make it look like
in 3-dimensional space.
Yeah, and we can make it look like an entire fleet is about to drop bombs on, let's say, Europe, and then just have them disappear. And they get all their planes up in the air, and we attack them from the other direction, assuming we're attacking Europe.
Who is doing this? The Navy, you said?
Somebody. Let's just say a group.
And you know this for a fact.
I know for a fact, yeah. So anyway, don't tell your guests.
A group within the U.S. government.
Yeah, okay, we'll leave it at that. Yes.
And is this something that could be seen with the naked eye, or
yes,
is this something
because
that
it glows? It glows, so it would be seeable. You can see it by the naked eye, and it would leave a radar trace. So it's perfect as a deception.
The subject of my talk tonight is about something that is smarter than you are: artificial intelligence. In fact, a lot of people who work in artificial intelligence believe that artificial intelligence is 1,000 times smarter than we are. It will be moving at speeds that are 100,000 times as fast as we think, and it will be digesting information and data 1,000,000 times more than we can. What is artificial intelligence? There are a lot of confused ideas about this outside in the world. But the answer is very simple. It's one sentence. Artificial intelligence is software that writes itself. It writes its own updates. It renews itself. We normally tend to think of software as stuff that we created and that we wrote, and the machines do what we tell them to do, and we own it. This is not any longer true. It writes itself at speeds that we can hardly comprehend, and people who write it know that you can't take it apart again and figure out what it's done. It writes independently, autonomously. It develops its own way of thinking, and there are dangers associated with that. So a lot of people ask, when is it going to happen? When is artificial intelligence going to be smarter than us people? Some people say 50 years. Some say 30 years. Some say 5 years. I say it already has surpassed us in many areas of our society. Where it's most critical of all, we're talking about life and death, is in medicine. Computers are better than we are as human beings in several areas already today. We're talking about here and now. This is not science fiction. I'm speaking next week at the Universitätsklinikum in Essen. And their radiologists, who are supposed to be some of the best radiologists in Germany, they say that a computer can recognize a tumor on an MT or on a CT, MRT or CT, faster and better and more precisely than a human being can. Now, I want you to understand what the power of artificial intelligence is, and I have two examples. One is surveillance cameras. Everybody knows, that we're being watched by cameras everywhere, and most people think surveillance is a camera there, and it's me down here, and it's watching me. One person, one camera. Well, that's because we're stupid. That's the way we comprehend the surveillance, one camera, one person. We can't comprehend it when it goes beyond that.
This image was taken 17,500 feet above Quantico, Virginia, and covers 15 square miles.
This whole image is at a very, very fine resolution. So if we wanted to know what is going on in any spot along this image, say near this building at this intersection, everything that is a moving object is being automatically tracked. The color boxes represent that the computer has recognized the moving objects. You can see individuals crossing the street. You can see individuals walking in parking lots. There's actually enough resolution to be able to see the people waving their arms or walking around, what kind of clothes they wear.
Unlike the Predator camera that limits field of view, Argus melds together video from each of its 368 chips to create a 1.8 billion pixel video stream. This makes it possible to zoom in and still see tremendous detail.
Now that's a Predator drone. It was taken at a secretive United States Air Force base in New Mexico. Predator drones you've seen, right? You've seen them on TV, you've seen them in the newspapers. They're old. They're 20 years old, the technology. It looks very scary when the Spiegel and the ARD write modern technology and the guys in the joystick and killing people and Taliban and in Afghanistan far away. But that's what a modern drone looks like. This is not a Predator, this is a Pegasus. It's an X-47B. It's owned by the Navy. It's a jet-powered machine, not like a propeller-driven Predator. It goes 2,000 miles into enemy territory. It carries 2,000 kilos worth of explosives, and it's run by artificial intelligence. It starts alone, flies its mission alone, comes back alone, and here's the clue, it lands all by itself on an aircraft carrier. Talk to any pilot you've ever met. What's the most difficult landing area you can possibly imagine? They say it's an aircraft carrier. Short runway, things moving, very hard. This thinking drone can do it. But here are the two keys to Pegasus. Pegasus is invisible. Now, I'm not talking about stealth and being invisible to radar. I'm talking about invisible to the human eye. And you won't find this in any newspaper anywhere. It's invisible to the human eye because the bottom has an LED layer on it, and the top has cameras, which have been removed here in the picture, which film the sky, and they project on the bottom a live picture of the clouds up above the aircraft, and you can hardly see it. And they're responsible for a lot of these UFO sightings in Nevada near the testing areas. Jet engine propulsion, a reach of, oops, this is in German, of 2,000 miles, start and landing all by itself. Stealth is optical stealth. You can't see it. And the kill decision, which is required by United States law to be made by human beings. Human beings must be in the loop before someone is killed by a drone, but it's in the machine. And it doesn't need people. It can decide by itself whether or not it kills somebody. And the experts say it's going to make less mistakes and less collateral damage than the human decisions. The kill decision in robots in the air, in robots on the ground, in robots in the water or underwater, where there are also drones, is made by, or can be made by machines. And in my book, I quote many official United States government documents which say, our goal is to have the kill decision made by them. The problem is, artificial intelligence, sometimes they make mistakes.
starting up a fire with a laser today, so if you keep your eye on that little stick I just dropped right on the top, that is actually a match, and that's what we're going to be lighting. And I am going to use some gasoline on this to speed things up, and I cannot stress enough that you guys should not try this at home whatsoever. This is dangerous, and I do not suggest that you guys try this out. This video today is not a tutorial or a how-to, it's just a demonstration to show you what it would look like if you were to start a fire up this way using a laser pointer. So I'm going to be using my Thor M2 laser pointer. I did a review on it and you can find that in the description below. So before I can even light that match, I will need to focus in my laser so that I have the smallest possible dot, which is the best for burning, and I am wearing my laser safety glasses so that I can stare at that light without damaging my eyes. So I focused in that dot and I'm now going to point it at the tip of the match and we'll see if we can get this lighted. And there you go, that's lighting a fire with a laser pointer.
Little pieces of the desk are exploding off when the laser hits. Wow, there's actually little fireballs shooting off the surface. It's probably easier for me to see through the goggles than on camera, but wow, that's ridiculous. That's so scary. I want you guys to be able to see this fireball effect, so I'm going to put some goggles over the camera. That way you guys have a better view of what's going on. Alright, here we go. Oh wow, that's ridiculous. That is some serious power. It just forms a plasma on the surface like nothing. Wow. It's amazing that a laser of this power can be built into a handheld device. That's so cool. Now I feel like the camera just isn't doing a great job at showing how much stronger this thing is now. So I'm going to put on the laser power meter. Alrighty, so it's okay, so it's over 5 watts, about 5.5 watts.
Is there a plan for the current direction of our world? We shall have world government, whether or not we like it. The only question is whether world government will be achieved by conquest or consent. James Warburg, 1950. Bush has had the knowledge in the background and has had the posts. As president, he will be in a better position than anyone else to pull together the people in the country who believe that we are in fact living in a one world and we have to act that way. David Rockefeller, on George H.W. Bush, 1988.
Before us, the opportunity to forge for ourselves and for future generations a new world order, a world where the rule of law, not the law of the jungle, governs the conduct of nations. When we are successful, and we will be, we have a real chance at this new world order, an order in which a credible United Nations can use its peacekeeping role to fulfill the promise and vision of the UN's.
Something I've been waiting weeks to bring you. It's the extraordinary Matt Walsh, the man behind the groundbreaking documentary, What is a Woman?
What is a woman? Can you tell me that? Well, you're at the Women's March. You must have some idea. Please, if one person could tell me what a woman is.
You are not here for women. We ask you to leave.
What is that? A woman is not anything in particular.
There is not one particular thing.
It could be many things to many people.
Some women have penises, right? Some men have vaginas.
I like scented candles, and I've watched Sex and the City.
Yeah.
How do I know if I'm a woman?
That's a great question.
You're not a scientist. You're not a gender studies major.
No.
How do you know that you're a man?
I guess because I got a dick.
Can a man become a woman?
I'm not a woman, so I can't really answer that.
Women only know what women are.
Are you a cat?
No.
Can you tell me what a cat is? Do you want to tell us what a woman is?
This 95-minute documentary is from author, speaker and podcast host Matt Walsh. He also has a book by the same name, and he travelled across America and other parts of the world seeking to answer that key question. I began by asking Matt why he made this documentary in the first place.
Well, it starts with just recognizing that gender ideology is this pervasive, toxic influence in our culture across the world, across the Western world anyway, and also realizing that, you know, in spite of the fact that it's been so successful in claiming so many people's minds, it is really quite hollow at its core. And it seemed to me, you know, going back years, that just a couple of questions really bring down the whole house of cards, starting with the question, which is in the title of the movie, of course,
what is a woman. If you can't define what the word woman is, then nothing that the gender ideologues say makes any sense. None of the claims that they make any sense if they can't define the term. And as we discovered filming the documentary, they certainly cannot define the term.
One of the things you've been talking about on your show is your allegation that government officials are aiding in pedophilia, child trafficking, and the grooming of children, right?
Well, you mean like what Jeffrey Epstein did with the Clintons?
Although vaccines and identity may seem unrelated, Bill Gates has spent the last few years funding research that can bring the two ideas together. Late last year, Gates once again turned to Robert Langer and his MIT colleagues to investigate new ways to permanently store and record the vaccination information of each individual. The result of their research was a new vaccine delivery method. They found that by using dissolvable microneedles that deliver patterns of near-infrared light-emitting microparticles to the skin, they could create particle patterns in the skin of vaccine recipients which are invisible to the eye but can be imaged using modified smartphones. Rice University describes the quantum dot tags left behind by the microneedles as something like a barcode tattoo. So who was behind this development? As lead researcher Kevin McHugh explains, the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation came to us and said, "Hey, we have a real problem, knowing who's vaccinated." So our idea was to put the record on the person. This way, later on, people can scan over the area to see what vaccines have been administered and give only the ones still needed. The microparticles that form the fluorescent quantum dot tags are delivered along with the vaccine, but they cannot be delivered by a traditional syringe. Instead, they must be delivered by a patch of microneedles made from a mixture of dissolvable sugar and a polymer called PVA, as well as the quantum dot dye in the vaccine. It should be no surprise, then, that big pharma vaccine manufacturers, in their scramble to produce the coronavirus vaccine that, Gates assures us, is necessary to go back to normal, have turned to a novel vaccine delivery method: a dissolvable microneedle array patch.
The University of Pittsburgh is where the polio vaccine was first discovered. At the medical center, researchers are now developing a vaccine that is delivered using a dissolvable patch called a microneedle array.
Think about them as almost like a Band-Aid. And so the microneedle array is simply applied to the skin topically, pressed into place very shortly, and then taken off and thrown away. And then the antigen is already delivered.
As is becoming evident, this new vaccine-delivered barcode-like tattoo is about much more than simply ensuring that children get all their Gavi-recommended immunizations. On a recent Ask Me Anything thread on Reddit, when asked, "What changes are we going to have to make to how businesses operate to maintain our economy while providing social distancing?" Bill Gates answered, "Eventually we will have some digital certificates to show who has recovered or been tested recently, or when we have a vaccine, who has received it."
If you don't get vaccinated, you're antisocial. This is what the Dutch Prime Minister and Health Minister told us. You don't get vaccinated just for yourself, but also for others. You do it for all of society. That's what I said. Today, this turned out to be complete nonsense. In a COVID hearing in the European Parliament, one of the Pfizer directors just admitted to me, at the time of introduction, the vaccine had never been tested on stopping the transmission of the virus. This removes the entire legal basis for the COVID passport. The COVID passport that led to massive institutional discrimination as people lost access.
The future is not just happening. The future is built by us, by a powerful community as you here in this room. We have the means to improve the state of the world.
And the way they start is by tracking you. If you go deep in the weeds in what these people are saying at this place, they're openly scheming up some of the craziest plans you'll ever hear of, like tracking your carbon footprint.
We're developing, through technology, an ability for consumers to measure their own carbon footprint. What does that mean? Where are they traveling? How are they traveling? What are they eating? What are they consuming on the platform? So, individual carbon footprint tracker. Stay tuned.
You heard it. The one world government wants to keep tabs on what you eat and where you go. All because John Kerry's a little mad that your cheeseburger is wiping out part of the population.
People forget, greenhouse gases are pollution. And 15 million people a year die because of the quality of the air around the world. We're dealing with a crisis here, folks. It's a crisis made by human beings.
Maybe they should take their own advice before jetting off across the world on those private jets, emitting all that carbon.
This would be a government, a world government, where you don't get to vote on anybody. This is everybody's worst nightmare.
I start from the supposition that the world is topsy-turvy, that things are all wrong, that the wrong people are in jail and the wrong people are out of jail, that the wrong people are in power, that the wealth is distributed in this country and the world in such a way as not simply to require small reform, but to require a drastic reallocation of wealth. All we have to do is think about the state of the world today and realize that things are all upside down. Now, if you don't think, if you just listen to TV and read scholarly things, you actually begin to think that things are not so bad, or that just little things are wrong. But you have to get a little detached and then come back and look at the world, and you are horrified. Now, as soon as you say the topic is civil disobedience, you're saying our problem is civil disobedience. That is not our problem. Our problem is civil obedience.
The most common connection, vital registration for the population is actually a child health card, because we reach more than 90% of children with at least one dose of vaccine as part of routine. So they're in the system. The challenge is that contact is not connected into the system. So if you could connect it, then you have the ability to give them their basic identity papers. You have ability then later on, if they want to own land or they want to have their rights, you're able to help them with that. But we're not currently taking advantage of that. You have ability then later on, if they want to own land or they want to have their rights, you're able to help them with that. But we're not currently taking advantage of that.
Chapter 7. In the first year of Belshazzar, king of Babylon, Daniel had a dream and visions of his head upon his bed. Then he wrote the dream and told the sum of the matters. Daniel spake and said, I saw in my vision by night, and behold, the four winds of the heaven strove upon the great sea. And four great beasts came up from the sea, diverse one from another. The first was like a lion, and had eagle's wings. I beheld till the wings thereof were plucked. And it was lifted up from the earth, and made stand upon the feet as a man, and a man's heart was given to it. And behold, another beast, a second like to a bear, and it raised up itself on one side. And it had 3 ribs in the mouth of it between the teeth of it. And they said thus unto it, Arise, devour much flesh. After this I beheld, and lo, another, like a leopard, which had upon the back of it 4 wings of a fowl. The beast had also 4 heads, and dominion was given to it. After this I saw in the night visions, and behold, a 4th beast, dreadful and terrible, and strong exceedingly, and it had great iron teeth. It devoured and brake in pieces, and stamped the residue with the feet of it, and it was diverse from all the beasts that were before it, and it had 10 horns. I considered the horns, and behold, there came up among them another little horn, before whom there were 3 of the first horns plucked up by the roots. And behold, in this horn were eyes like the eyes of a man, and a mouth speaking great things. I beheld till the thrones were cast down, and the Ancient of Days did sit, whose garment was white as snow, and the hair of his head like the pure wool. His throne was like the fiery flame, and his wheels as burning fire. A fiery stream issued and came forth from before him. Thousands ministered unto him, and 10,000 times 10,000 stood before him. The judgment was set, and the books were opened. I beheld then, because of the voice of the great words which the horn spake, I beheld even till the beast was slain, and his body destroyed and given to the burning flame. As concerning the rest of the beasts, they had their dominion taken away, yet their lives were prolonged for a season and time. I saw in the night visions, and behold, one like the Son of Man came with the clouds of heaven, and came to the Ancient of Days, and they brought him near before him. And there was given him dominion and glory, and a kingdom, that all people, nations, and languages should serve him. His dominion is an everlasting dominion, which shall not pass away, and his kingdom that which shall not be destroyed. I, Daniel, was grieved in my spirit in the midst of my body, and the visions of my head troubled me. I came near unto one of them that stood by, and asked him the truth of all this. So he told me, and made me know the interpretation of the things. These great beasts which are four kings which shall arise out of the earth. But the saints of the Most High shall take the kingdom, and possess the kingdom forever, even forever and ever. Then I would know the truth of the fourth beast, which was diverse from all the others, exceeding dreadful, whose teeth were of iron, and his nails of brass, which devoured, brake in pieces, and stamped the residue with his feet. And of the 10 horns that were in his head, and of the other which came up, and before whom 3 fell, even of that horn that had eyes, and a mouth that spake very great things, whose look was more stout than his fellows, I beheld, and the same horn made war with the saints, and prevailed against them, until the Ancient of Days came, and judgment was given to the saints of the Most High. And the time came that the saints possessed the kingdom. Thus he said, The fourth beast shall be the fourth kingdom upon earth, which shall be diverse from all kingdoms, and shall devour the whole earth, and shall tread it down, and break it in pieces. And the 10 horns out of this kingdom are 10 kings that shall arise, and another shall rise after them. And he shall be diverse from the first, and he shall subdue 3 kings. And he shall speak great words against the Most High, and shall wear out the saints of the Most High, and think to change times and laws. And they shall be given into his hand until a time, and times, and the dividing of time. But the judgment shall sit, and they shall take away his dominion, to consume and to destroy it unto the end. And the kingdom and dominion and the greatness of the kingdom under the whole heaven shall be given to the people of the saints of the Most High, whose kingdom is an everlasting kingdom, and all dominions shall serve and obey him. Hitherto is the end of the matter. As for me, Daniel, my cogitations much troubled me, and my countenance changed in me, but I kept the matter in my heart. Chapter 13. And I stood upon the sand of the sea, and saw a beast rise up out of the sea, having 7 heads and 10 horns, and upon his horns 10 crowns, and upon his heads the name of blasphemy. And the beast which I saw was like unto a leopard, and his feet were as the feet of a bear, and his mouth as the mouth of a lion. And the dragon gave him his power, and his seat, and great authority. And I saw one of his heads as it were wounded to death, and his deadly wound was healed. And all the world wondered after the beast. And they worshipped the dragon which gave power unto the beast. And they worshipped the beast, saying, Who is like unto the beast? Who is able to make war with him? And there was given unto him a mouth speaking great things and blasphemies, and power was given unto him to continue 42 months. And he opened his mouth in blasphemy against God, to blaspheme his name, and his tabernacle, and them that dwell in heaven. And it was given unto him to make war with the saints, and to overcome them, and power was given him over all kindreds and tongues and nations. And all that dwell upon the earth shall worship him, whose names are not written in the book of life of the Lamb slain from the foundation of the world. If any man have an ear, let him hear. He that leadeth into captivity shall go into captivity. He that killeth with the sword must be killed with the sword. Here is the patience and the faith of the saints. And I beheld another beast coming up out of the earth, and he had 2 horns like a lamb, and he spake as a dragon. And he exerciseth all the power of the first beast before him, and causeth the earth and them which dwell therein to worship the first beast, whose deadly wound was healed. And he doeth great wonders, so that he maketh fire come down from heaven on the earth in the sight of men, and deceiveth them that dwell on the earth by the means of those miracles which he had power to do in the sight of the beast, saying to them that dwell on the earth, that they should make an image to the beast, which had the wound by a sword, and did live. And he had power to give life unto the image of the beast, that the image of the beast should both speak, and cause that as many as would not worship the image of the beast should be killed. And he causeth all, both small and great, rich and poor, free and bond, to receive a mark in their right hand, or in their foreheads, and that no man might buy or sell, save he that had the mark, or the name of the beast, or the number of his name. Here is wisdom. Let him that hath understanding count the number of the beast, for it is the number of a man, and his number is 666. Chapter 17. And there came one of the 7 angels which had the 7 vials, and talked with me, saying unto me, Come hither. I will shew unto thee the judgment of the great whore that sitteth upon many waters, with whom the kings of the earth have committed fornication, and the inhabitants of the earth have been made drunk with the wine of her fornication. So he carried me away in the spirit into the wilderness, and I saw a woman sit upon a scarlet-colored beast, full of names of blasphemy, having 7 heads and 10 horns. And the woman was arrayed in purple and scarlet color, and decked with gold and precious stones and pearls, having a golden cup in her hand full of abominations and filthiness of her fornication. And upon her forehead was a name written, Mystery, Babylon the Great, the mother of harlots and abominations of the earth. And I saw the woman drunken with the blood of the saints, and with the blood of the martyrs of Jesus. And when I saw her, I wondered with great admiration. And the angel said unto me, Wherefore didst thou marvel? I will tell thee the mystery of the woman, and of the beast that carrieth her, which hath the 7 heads and 10 horns. The beast that thou sawest was and is not, and shall ascend out of the bottomless pit, and go into perdition. And they that dwell on the earth shall wonder, whose names were not written in the book of life from the foundation of the world, when they behold the beast that was, and is not, and yet is. And here is the mind which hath wisdom. The 7 heads are 7 mountains, on which the woman sitteth. And there are 7 kings, 5 are fallen, and 1 is. And the other is not yet come. And when he cometh, he must continue a short space. And the beast that was and is not, even he is the 8th, and is of the 7, and goeth into perdition. And the 10 horns which thou sawest are 10 kings, which have received no kingdom as yet, but receive power as kings 1 hour with the beast. These have 1 mind, and shall give their power and strength unto the beast. These shall make war with the Lamb, and the Lamb shall overcome them, for he is Lord of lords and King of kings, and they that are with him are called, and chosen, and faithful. And he saith unto me, The waters which thou sawest, where the whore sitteth, are peoples and multitudes, and nations and tongues. And the 10 horns which thou sawest upon the beast, these shall hate the whore, and shall make her desolate and naked, and shall eat her flesh, and burn her with fire. For God hath put in their hearts to fulfill his will, and to agree, and give their kingdom unto the beast, until the words of God shall be fulfilled. And the woman which thou sawest is that great city, which reigneth over the kings of the earth.